Susan is someone who really does not need an introduction
No, that's true.
For any of us. A longtime member at Trinity, and also she has spoken about Lesvos and her time there in the past. So this is, in a sense, a kind of an update, because that story keeps on having dramatic and often very painful things that were going on. So in any case, I think that it's very fitting that Susan is following, the kind of political presentation that Kent made last week about asylum seekers in this country in her talk about refugees. So Susan, why don't you take it from here?
Okay, thank you. Thank you. I hope that my connectivity stays solid through the internet. I do have a slideshow that I'd like to present, but first I wanted to start with a little imaginative exercise. I wanted to talk a little bit about journeys, tying into also Father Glenn's sermon about the journeys that everybody takes. And in order to make a refugee's journey more vivid, I wanted to ask us to participate together in a little imaginative exercise that might make the refugee situation in Greece more clear. So if you're willing, please try to suspend your disbelief and play a small game of Let's Pretend. You may remember doing this as a child. So just go along with me here and turn off the critical adult part of your mind and pretend you're a small child listening to a story. So first, let's pretend that the governor of Massachusetts declares war on the governor of New York. So first you get border walls and checkpoints along the border of New York and Massachusetts. Then you get sporadic gunfights and then some small skirmishes. Then the airstrikes start. First, they only target Albany, but your brother works at the GE plant there, and that plant is targeted and hit. Your sister-in-law calls you hysterical. He's been killed and she's frightened. Can she and the kids come stay with you? So you say, of course. You can all stay in the finished basement because you only used it for watching football anyway. So the airstrikes continue, and then Albany falls to the invading army from Massachusetts, and your daughter is at college in Oneonta. And she calls and says, Dad, you remember my roommate Emily from Boston? She just saw on Facebook that her dad, who was in the resistance in Boston, was executed, and her mom just got here with her little sister, and I'm scared because they say the troops are coming closer, and can I come home and bring them? And you say, okay, you had better quit college in Oneonta. Maybe you can transfer to BU. Your roommate's mom and her little sister can stay in the camper in the driveway. So the oncoming troops get to Oneonta, and you hear some pretty scary reports of torture and rape in that city, and you're happy your daughter is safe. Then suddenly you get really bad news. There's an airstrike at the Lockheed Martin facility in Owego, and your best friend is killed. Then your daughter comes home hysterical because she was at the Starbucks on Upper Front Street, and an airstrike hits SUNY Broome. So you decide you'll take the family and get to the neutral state of Pennsylvania. You get everybody in the camper and the 2 cars, and you make a caravan to Great Bend. At the border, you are interviewed and put into a refugee camp that's been built in a hurry behind the fireworks store across from the mobile station. There are approximately 20,000 people there who have all come from all over the southern tier. You think now you're safe and you can relax, but there's no place for you in northeastern Pennsylvania. There are no jobs, and people stare at you with hostility. You don't like the way the police look at your daughter, and then your friend's son is beaten up. He is accused of littering, and you are pretty sure the police beat him up because your last name is Cooper, and they don't like people whose last names begin with C. At the camp, your family is in a flimsy tent with no wooden floor. There is 1 toilet for 218 people. There is 1 shower for 300 people. You wait 2 hours in line for breakfast, and you get stale bread and watery oatmeal. You hand over your driver's license and find out you have to wait 2 years for an appointment to see if you can get permanent residence in Pennsylvania. Meanwhile, your wife's asthma is acting up because of the stress. In her hurry to leave, she dropped her inhaler and stepped on it. There's a medical clinic, but it looks pretty ramshackle. It's built in a tent and has only basic medicine. And when you get there at 6 a.m., there's already a line of 50 people. In the meantime, your wife can't breathe now. So that was my way of trying to make vivid what some of the refugees face. So I just wanted to try to make vivid, although for many refugees that the journey of trying to get from the dangerous state of New York to the neutral state of Pennsylvania can include 55 days of walking at night, hiding and walking. It can include the siege voyage between Turkey and Greece in a small rickety boat, which is 4 miles of open water and not much safety. It can include being crammed in the back of a van with way too many people. So the refugee situation, when they get to Greece, many of them have had really, really traumatic experiences. And they get to Greece and then it's, kind of worse. So I do have, I'd like to share my screen. So I wanted to just talk about the current conditions of refugee life. I was on the island of Lesvos in the summers of 2017, 2018, and 2019. But I still have connections and friends. And actually, I get a lot of my news from Facebook. So I'm going to start with a brief overview of refugee arrival on Lesvos. I'm going to talk about how many refugees arrived in 2020 as compared to 2019. I'm going to briefly discuss pushbacks. I'm going to talk about the conditions that refugees live in. And I'm going to talk about how Trinity helped, because Trinity, our church, gave a generous donation in December to the Hope Project, which was the group I'd been volunteering with. And I hope to have time for questions and comments. So where do asylum seekers come from? Families, individuals, and minors traveling alone come to Lesvos from Asia and Africa. Many are driven from their home by war. From the east, they come from Afghanistan, Syria, and Iraq. From the south, Nigeria, Cameroon, the Congo, Central African Republic, and other countries. It might help to look at some maps. So here's a map of Southern Europe with Greece. And the island of Lesvos is roughly triangular shaped, and it's quite close to the border of Turkey. There's a little overhang in the Turkish coast, and Lesvos is situated right underneath it. It's in the most eastern part of the Aegean Sea. And it's about 4 miles of open water between Turkey and Greece and the island of Lesvos. In this map, Lesvos is quite far to the west. Again, a little triangular brown spot off the coast of Turkey. And we can have a larger view of Turkey, of Syria, where an ongoing civil war has displaced approximately a quarter of the population. Iraq, where the American invasion had a destabilizing effect. And then other countries from whom refugees come are a little further off to the east. And then this map shows the continent of Africa, from which a great many refugees come, and the journey is quite a bit longer from the central parts of Africa, the Congo, and then the eastern part, Nigeria and Cameroon. People somehow manage to get into Turkey and across into Greece, which is approximately where the cursor is on the screen. So are people still arriving on the island? In 2019, there were 1,800 boats which arrived on the island carrying 60,000 people. In 2020, only 293 boats arrived, carrying about 10,000 people. So this decrease happened because of COVID-19 and also increased border patrols and pushbacks by the Greek Coast Guard. These pushbacks are illegal. So let me explain what I mean by illegal pushbacks. I've said that 293 boats arrived, but that's a small percentage of the boats which left Turkey. The Aegean boat reports have found that 1,000 boats started the trip and 778 were driven back by Frontex, the European Coast Guard, and also the Greek Coast Guard. So how does this happen? Almost half of the pushbacks happened around Lesvos. In 2020, over 6,000 people were pushed back to the sea in 207 rubber boats with the engines and the fuel removed, and they were left drifting, or they were towed back to Turkey by the Greek Coast Guard. Over 3,000 were forced into life rafts and left to drift. This is an illegal use of rescue equipment as a deportation tool. In the first 6 weeks of 2021, 23 boats have been stopped and 615 people arrested and sent back to Turkey, where they were picked up by the Turkish Coast Guard. So what about the first months of 2021? In January, 9 boats arrived on Lesvos, carrying 188 people. 23 boats were stopped and 615 people were arrested. In February so far, 173 people have arrived and 370 people were prevented from landing and were pushed back. This is a brief media report. I found a report on the German equivalent of public broadcasting about the situation with the pushbacks. We're going to watch about 3 minutes of this. This was from June, and again, it's from a German group that does the equivalent of public broadcasting.
The Sea of Greece poses a puzzling question with a disturbing answer. More migrant boats are leaving Turkey for the EU, but on the Greek island of Lesbos, there hasn't been an increase in arrivals. There were 19 people on this boat.
Please help us, anyone, please.
A 16-year-old from Afghanistan filmed these pictures. He said it was shortly after masked men attacked them from a dinghy. The boat was in Greek waters off Lesbos on the 5th of June this year. The boy doesn't want to be identified.
Keep our machines. Destroy our machines.
All of us are too much afraid because 2 men have hit all of us with their stick. They are wearing black mask on their faces, and one have a knife. They just make a hole on our boat and cut the wire which is connected with the engine.
We analyzed dozens of similar reports and videos, comparing them with geodata such as coastlines and the position of the sun, along with information from emergency calls, official reports, and eyewitness accounts. Our conclusion: refugees and migrants are being kept away from the Greek coast at times by force. It seems masked men often attack migrant boats on the open seas, damaging them so they can't be steered and leaving them adrift. Sometimes they even actively force the boats back into Turkish waters, a tactic known as pushback. These pushbacks are illegal and against international law, but it's difficult to establish for certain who these masked men actually are, even though the evidence is apparently overwhelming. Evidence such as this video. A detailed analysis of both structures led our colleagues from the investigative platforms Bellingcat and Lighthouse Reports to clearly identify the dinghy as belonging to a Greek Coast Guard.
So that gets most of the message across that I wanted to share. In the next slide, you'll see that this issue has also come to the international attention, and there was an article in the Washington Post about this in February. I think the picture is telling, the small boy surrounded by the police, and this picture was taken in Lesvos. And just a brief article that I saw that human rights lawyers have called on Frontex, which is the European Border and Coast Guard Agency, to immediately stop their activities in the Aegean Sea. And they formally accused the agency of violating the rights of migrants to seek asylum, as well as other breaches of EU and international law. So this is something that I'd heard about in rumored form, even early in 2017, but now it's sort of coming to more international attention. So the result is that it works. If it is a deliberate tactic of the Greek government, it does work. From a high of over 20,000 in the summer of 2020, there are now fewer than 10,000 asylum seekers on the island. The number is lower because people are being transferred to refugee camps on the mainland, and because the Greek government policy of illegal pushbacks by the Coast Guard is successful and keeps refugees from landing. So this brings us to the next question. What are conditions like for them? What are conditions like for them when they do land? This is a picture of a medical clinic on the island. It looks a lot like the medical clinic where I volunteered in 2019. And it just shows a mother with her newborn child in the waiting room. MSF is Médecins Sans Frontières, or Doctors Without Borders, in Lesvos from January. Oh, I should have corrected the date. January 31st, 2020. No, it's a correct date. January 31, 2021. More than 7,000 people, including 2,500 children, continue to live in tents exposed in the harsh winter. When I was on the island in the summers of 2017, 2018, and 2019, most refugees were housed in a large camp, Moria, named for the nearby town. This was famous as the worst refugee camp in Europe. It was built for 3,000 people, had inadequate water and sewage systems. In September 2020, when there were 20,000 people there, it burned down. A new camp has been made on vacant land behind the discount supermarket. The refugees call it Moria 2.0. I happened to go swimming at that site in the summer of 2019, where I took the following photo. As you can see, it's a flat area in front of a small hill. It's near the ocean, and there's a beach. Later, I found out the site has never been developed because it's an old military shooting range. The land is polluted by lead and unexploded ordnance. There was a picture on Facebook this morning of a hand grenade that was found there yesterday. I didn't know that when we went swimming there. I did notice that there really wasn't any place to change into my swimsuit. And as we were leaving, we passed a goat herd and his herd of goats. So next I will show you a picture of the same area taken in December. This photo was taken by my friend Lena, a nurse from Norway, on December 8th, 2020. The tents are provided by the United Nations. I mentioned the lead contamination problem with the site, and it is also known to flood as there's insufficient drainage. In other words, the Greeks wouldn't put houses there or a school. They did put up tents for the refugees, but they put the tents up without wooden floors. It looks okay in the sunshine. 3 days later, Lena posted more photos, these taken after a big rainstorm. And here's a quote from her post. So this was the reality after last night's, with what I would call monsoon rain and thunderstorm. On the day, I received a little boy in the parking lot outside the clinic in the back room of a van. In a few days, mom and kids will be back from the hospital to this. Just saying, feel free to share. I should mention that Lena is a obstetrical nurse and a midwife. And so when she says on the day I received a little boy in the parking lot outside the clinic in the back room of a van, I think she means that's where the mother gave birth to the child. But I haven't been able to speak to her, so I can't verify that. Then the following photos were taken 1 month later on January 11th, 2021. They were posted to Facebook by the Aegean Boat Report, which is a Norwegian non-governmental organization that keeps track of the arrivals on the island. Then there are other problems of safety. Here's a post from January 20th. A tent burned down and another was damaged in a fire in Moria 2.0 today, supposedly due to faulty electrical wiring. The fire was put out by the residents, but luckily no one was injured. Had this happened at night, the outcome could have been catastrophic. The people living in the tent lost what little they had. The tents are put up too close to each other and not in accordance with fire safety regulations. Electricity in the camp is a mess, and people light fires to cook or keep warm. This isn't the first fire in this camp, and it will definitely not be the last. It's just a matter of time before lives are lost. Then there was another fire in February too. So now so far what I've showed you is all bad news. So now I want to show you some good news and tell you about the Hope Project, which is the group that I volunteered for. Trinity Mission and Ministry recently made a generous donation to the Hope Project, and I want to show you what the money was used for and how it was spent. So this is a picture of Eric and Philippa Kempson, who were the founders of the Hope Project. The picture of Philippa was taken on her birthday in December. They're both from Great Britain. They're both artists at heart. They came to Greece 22 years ago because Eric was a sculptor and Philippa made jewelry. They had an only child, a daughter, and they wanted to live somewhere that would be a little more slow-paced and more amenable to their artistic souls than where they were in England. So there are two areas where the Hope Project works, in the new camp, Moria 2.0, and in the Greek community on the island. So here's a picture of sleeping bags that had been distributed, had been sent to the Hope Project, being distributed to the residents, being distributed in Moria at the new camp on February 5th. Here's a note from Facebook, a Facebook post in mid-February. Today we sent 750 bottles of shampoo and 750 bottles of hand wash to be distributed in the camp. The photos are a mixture of hours from loading and MCAT from distributing. Although we are currently still in lockdown and the situation in the camp is horrible, we are happy to be working with other agencies to have a direct way of getting aid to the people. MCAT stands for Moria Corona Awareness Team, and it's another aid group with whom the Hope Project partners. So here's a picture at the Hope Project as they're loading up the soap. And then the earlier picture was where the soap was being distributed. A lot of volunteering is just lifting and carrying and moving things from one place to another. And a lot of it is just that. These are items that the Hope Project purchased locally from Greek merchants to distribute. So this is a way of they're giving back to the community because when they get money and donations from Europe or from the United States, they can spend it locally, and that helps the local merchants. Here's a lovely shot of a little girl washing her Barbie doll. Part of daily life in camp. And Eric posted it on his page with a general comment about the shower situation in camp. We live in a sad world when a doll is cleaner than its young owner. As you all know, the camp has very minimal hygiene facilities, the main of which is a couple of small tents for bucket showers. In other words, you just fill a bucket with water and pour it over your head. Currently, 34 showers are being built in the hopes they can give everyone a shower a week. There are 7,500 people in the camp. Assuming as it's Greece, Sundays it won't be operational. So that would mean needing to shower roughly 1,250 people a day. That's 37 people in each shower daily. Say the showers can be open for a maximum of 8 hours a day, as there's currently only 9 hours of sunlight. That's about 5 people an hour, which gives people 12 minutes each, including any setbacks, cleaning the showers, getting changed, and switching with the next person in a COVID-safe manner. This is also assuming that the showers run continuously without fault at maximum capacity. Although mathematically possible, these are human beings. It's bad enough having a nuclear family in one bathroom. The idea of not showering for a week and only getting 5 minutes. Say you're a young mom, you'd have to wash yourself and the baby in that time. It's better than nothing, but how can Europe let people be treated like this? So this, his very sort of angry post was followed by one of fantastic news. And this is something where I think the money from Trinity made a difference, given the timing. The Hope Project has taken delivery of 2 shower blocks with 10 showers in each block. Our plan is to provide hot water showers daily to as many people as possible forced to live in horrific conditions on Lesvos. This was made possible by Leave No One Behind and other partners being us, and we look forward to more future collaborations with them. And this was dated December 29th, 2020. Here was another post. We've made up food parcels for refugee families who aren't receiving money anymore. This was around Christmas time. Although not everyone celebrates the holidays, a lot of organizations here are now closed for this period. It's not a lot, but at least they can have a big meal for Christmas. This was from December 24th. This is just a little shot I thought was pretty and cheerful and shows some of the more fun side of being a volunteer is that you can be creative and enjoy life and have fellowship as well as working, and the work is kind of hard, and as well as being seeing some of the sadness that you're surrounded by. I thought it was really sweet that they had this nice Christmas tree set up. It's loading kind of slowly on my screen. I hope you can all see it.
We can see it just fine.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. And then this was another way the Hope Project helps in the community. Last week, we gave masks and PPE to the ambulance service here on Lesvos. We try and help the emergency services as best we can, but they still need PPE. This is due to the underfunding of the emergency and health services, and also due to the rise of COVID-19 cases on the island and Greece in general. We want to thank everyone so much for the PPE we've received so far. And another shot, we are still continuing to help the local emergency services as well as the refugees. Yesterday, we gave boxes of medical supplies, including masks and surgical equipment, to the local ambulance service and hospital. They are incredible people doing an amazing job under difficult circumstances without the necessary equipment. We are very happy to be helping them, but wish we could do more. The crisis on Lesvos is not only affecting the refugees. Every day we do our best to help support local Greek families who are being hit hard by the economic situation this winter. This is also due to the increased pressure of COVID-19 and the additional lockdown restrictions. This morning, we sent an aid parcel for a family with a newborn baby whose father has been taken seriously ill with cancer. Every Friday, we also organize a supply of diapers and hygiene that is then distributed to families. Later on today, we are assisting another family with food parcel, clothes for the children and mom, some firewood, hygiene, and cleaning supplies. I wanted to include this small interview with a refugee from Afghanistan. This was not made by the Hope Project, but by the Moria Corona Awareness Team. And it was an article about where a young Afghani asylum seeker refugee had been interviewed. I come from Afghanistan. I came to Lesvos in June last year with my wife and 5-year-old son. Before, we were 3 months in Iran and a year in Turkey, where although we tried, we couldn't find a job. We lived pretty well in Kabul. I studied pharmacy and was already working in the industry when I fell into conflict with a powerful political actor. I have received direct threats to the lives of mine and my family, and you know, in Afghanistan, there is no strong rule of law, so we stayed out of the way. The good thing is that we no longer live in the camp, but in an apartment in the city. But I come here almost daily. He means come to the refugee camp for the needs of our group of about 250 people from different nationalities, men and women. Thanks to our own campaigns and actions, we do not have cases. He means cases of coronavirus or COVID-19 in Karatepe. That's another name for the refugee camp. It's the location. But the lack of basic infrastructure, forced overcrowding, and poor hygienic conditions make the situation dreaded, and not just for the crown virus. Yes, we like Greece and would be happy to stay here if we could make our lives. An important part of the work that Eric and Philippa do is that they created an arts project. They have a warehouse for distribution of clothing and another warehouse where they've created an arts center. They provide the refugees with canvas and paints and drawing materials. This is a picture that I took in 2019 showing two young women working on their paintings. The space can also be used for performance or dance. They were having, when I was there in 2019, they had dance lessons. They had one evening a week when women could come just by themselves and have just sort of fellowship with other women. And so I want to show examples of some of the paintings that the refugees have done because they tend to be really evocative. This is a recent painting done from a photograph. This one is one that a picture that I took in 2019. It's a clear political image of the refugees and how this one refugee artist saw her situation. The refugees are arriving in boats on the shore of Europe, and the hands are pushing them back into the water. The nails on the hands are painted with the flags of the European countries. Beyond the barrier of the hands are the symbols of Europe, the Parliamentary Tower in England, the Eiffel Tower, and I'm not sure what the bear represents, but clearly it represents the situation this young woman felt. This was another painting. It was made actually before the fire at Moria. This was painted in 2018. This is a more recent artwork. As is this one. So that concludes what I had in mind to talk about. I did include a couple of my sources, which I can make available in the church bulletin if people want to learn more, because it's unconventional documentation in terms of scholarship, but it is actual, documentation, the pictures and the articles that I find on the internet. So that being said, thank you for listening. And I would be happy to be part of a discussion or answer any questions.
So is your church taking contributions then for the whole project, or is there some sort of a fund?
Well, I don't know. That would be a question for Sue Carpenter if she's on. You can also contribute directly to the Hope Project. They have a fundraising page.
Thank you. That was interesting, Susan. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Susan, I want to look at that picture with the fingernails again. Could you
Okay.
share the screen again?
Sure. it's not an easy situation. What I got out of the volunteering, there's a wonderful sense of camaraderie and fellowship that develops among the volunteers, and the Hope Project wants volunteers to be at least 21, because they feel that it's too difficult for young people under that age. It's for me, it was a very rewarding experience, but at times it was very difficult and very painful.
Yeah, I can see it. Well, you know, it's an experience that many of us won't have, but we are very grateful for you for doing it, you know, to know that you're making that much of a difference. I know a little bit of it because I'm teaching in the New York City school system right now during COVID. And so I see some pretty sad things. Janine and I cry a lot, not for ourselves, but for these kids. It's bad.
Are you seeing children of refugees coming through, or are you just seeing the?
No, children whose parents have died of for whatever reasons, and they're the ones who are the most susceptible. And so they're the ones that you know, tell us that they're at Christmas time. Janine had a kid tell her that her mother had died. And you know, it just is hard when the other children are saying what they're thankful for, and this child is saying, oh, my mother died, you know, and the child's what, 12 years old, or maybe Janine's kids are younger. You know, it's heartbreaking. Mm-hmm. I have one student who has COVID and can't get up and do anything, can't attend school. Mm-hmm. Can't do Zoom because he's so weak, and he's 13.
Well, Susan, I'm hopeful that all of the members of the mission and ministry will be able to watch this. It's so powerful. I can't thank you enough for showing it. I'm totally broken up by watching it, and so thrilled that we did what we did, and just hope to do more. And one of the things that was very amazing to me is that you had a system in which the money was able to be sent over there without a concern of it being intercepted by others. Can you speak to that?
Yes, Eric, how can I explain this? When you give $100 to the Hope Project, they spend $100 of it on refugees. There's no overhead, there's no staff. It's Eric and Philippa and other volunteers, and they don't take a salary for themselves from the foundation that they founded. They still run the gift shop where he sells his sculpture and she sells her jewelry. They're scrupulous in that the money always goes to where they see a need. And then the way they find out where the need is, when I was there in 2019, the other volunteers working with us in the warehouse, of a staff of maybe 12 on any given day, I was volunteering from the United States. There were 2 young women volunteering from Great Britain, and there were 2 volunteers from Spain. And the rest were people from the refugee camp. And so, in other words, it was the refugees helping each other. And so the reason they had a system of tickets, we were distributing, at that time, we were distributing clothing and what they call hygiene, bottles of shampoo, toothbrushes, toothpaste, clean underwear, you know, that kind of thing. And so each family would come with a ticket on the particular day, so that they could get their supply of 2 shirts and a pair of pants for a man, and two blouses and a skirt for a woman, and 2 shirts and a pair of shorts for a child, that kind of thing, and 1 pair of shoes, possibly, but only if their shoes were totally broken and they were barefoot, because we had a shortage of shoes. So the family would come and get a ticket, and then their name was recorded on the computer program, and the gal who was doing the recording was was a refugee from Syria. And the way the family with the ticket would get the ticket would be that the refugees who worked at the center would go around the camp in the evening and see who was most in need. it wasn't like a bunch of Americans or Europeans walking around with a clipboard saying, well, this family's got 4 kids and only 2 pairs of shoes. Let's make sure they get to the Hope Project. It was the refugees helping each other and assessing themselves who needed stuff. So that way they could keep it honest, you know? And then the tickets couldn't be counterfeited because they were basically just, you know, handwritten pieces of paper. It was very simple. So and I'm noticing the same thing as I read on Facebook about the Corona awareness team. They're in the camp going around during the day doing the same kind of thing, but they're also they're refugees themselves. They're not, you know, people from Sweden or Switzerland who are coming in and saying, okay, well, this is how I think it ought to be done. It's people helping people. They also have a system for recycling. They had a really terrible problem when I was there in 2019 with too much plastic waste, empty plastic bottles of water, because there wasn't a good system of drinking water. So constantly there was buying plastic bottles of water, and the plastic bottles were everywhere. So now the refugees themselves came up with an idea. You bring a certain amount of bottles to the recycling center, you get something in return that entitles you to a service. But the refugees came up with it themselves, not somebody from the Red Cross. Where with the Hope Project, the donation money really does go to the refugees.
May I ask about the water? You said there was so much lead in the water, and then you're talking about showers and so forth. Is it the leaded water that they have to use for the showers?
Well, I don't know, but I probably, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I really don't know.
Yeah.
Because it was just a wasteland. And the difficulty is there is European money. There is money within the European Union to help refugees, but it doesn't get spent on the refugees. It gets spent on border patrols and the boats and the uniforms and the extra people to work at Frontex. And as we've seen, they're not always acting in good faith.
Yeah. Susan, well, one of the other interesting things is there's a local organization through St. Patrick's Church called Showers for Hope. And with this one, many of our shoes and pants and towels and things like that are welcome to be distributed to the people coming in once a week to get their shower. On the other hand, working with you, it was far better to be able to actually send money because, as you say, they were able to spend the money in the camp or in the community, and money was much more, they knew how to spend it, and it wouldn't do any good to pack up clothes and send to them. Aren't I correct on that?
You're very correct. I made friends with a refugee family from Iraq, and in Christmas of 2018, I sent them a package of clothing for the children, and it was just nightmarish. I mean, I spent about $100 on the clothes because I bought them new. I didn't get them at the Salvation Army. I got them new clothes, and I spent about $100 on the clothes. Then there was my postage cost, which was close to $30. Then when my friend tried to pick them up, there was a $45 customs charge, and besides which the taxi drive he had to pay to get to the post box, because I didn't realize he'd been moved. I had an incorrect address. So it turned into like a $200 or $300 cost just for some clothes. Would have been easier if I'd sent him the money. So also another friend, a refugee from Afghanistan, someone had tried to send him a computer and it just got confiscated.
Yeah,
So I thought it was a real, I'm sorry.
No,
I thought it was a really smart move too. You said that people were using the money to buy from local businesses from Greece, the local town, and that really creates good feelings between the town and the refugees. So that was a very smart move.
Yeah, the unemployment rate in Greece is around 25%, and it's 30% among people under 30. And so there's a lot of resentment, and fear, that sort of thing of, oh, these refugees are going to take our jobs, et cetera. So, and actually in February last year, there was a center for refugees that had been built by the Swiss Red Cross with the help of the Swiss Red Cross. And it was like a day center. People came like between noon and 5 o'clock or noon and 7 o'clock, and they could get English lessons. There was a makeshift gym. There was a little library. It was like a little community center. They called it One Happy Family. but the locals resented it. And in February, it was torched. It was destroyed by arson. And also at the same time, one of the smaller refugee camps that had been built by the government, but that was not being used, that when it was empty, was torched. And because the local people are angry and resentful and frightened. So if and Eric actually had kind of a guard system at the warehouse. He always had these big, strong African guys sleeping there overnight, right by the door. So if there was a problem, there'd be people on site, you know. So his plan of getting money and spending it in the community is much better than us trying to, like, you know, send over some towels, because it would just be too expensive.
Mhm.
Sometimes money's
Susan,
just. Mhm.
Susan, I have a question. This is Diane. I'm really curious, how did you get involved in this? And do you have to go over there in order to be a volunteer? Are there things we could do here if we wanted to volunteer? And is there a link where we could send money, or should we do it through the church? And if you could kind of give us that information, maybe in the bulletin, that would be great.
I can put something in chat. When you look up the Hope Project, there are a lot of organizations that are Hope this and Hope that and Project this and Project that. So you have to include the last name Kempson, Eric and Philippa's last name, Hope Project Kempson. And when you look that up, you can get to their website, and they do have a link for accepting donations. I got into this by persistence and dumb luck. In May of 2016, my daughter went to France in October of 2016 and stayed there until March of 2017. So I went to visit her in the wintertime, and we had a nice week together at Christmas. And then when she came back to the United States in March, I went to pick her up in New York, and there had been a picture in the media, a very sad and terrible picture of a small child who had drowned off the coast of Turkey. And he was part of a refugee family from Syria that was trying to get from Turkey to Greece. And his name was Ayhan Kurda, and he was 3 years old. And there was a picture of him on the beach, and it made worldwide headlines. And I looked at it and I thought, what is going on? What can be happening in the Eastern Mediterranean that a child is just washed up on a beach like that? I mean, what's going on? I don't understand. So I read a little bit about the Syrian situation, and I was visiting with my daughter in the apartment in Brooklyn where she stayed when she first got back to New York. And I heard myself say to my daughter and her friend, I want to go to Greece and help the Syrian refugees. And then I thought, where did that thought come from? And that was the summer of 2017. That was the spring of 2017. That was March. So I began looking into aid organizations that I might be able to work with. And I found two, and one of them wouldn't take me because I was over 60. And the other wouldn't take me because I was over 65. So that was no good. So then I found another organization that on the application process, they didn't want any age reference, but they wanted a 3-page statement of what were my qualifications and what was my experience and was I a good person and how could I prove I was a good person? And why was I going to do this crazy thing? And they wanted all this information. And then I sent it all back and they said, okay, good, you can come in October. I said, no, you don't get it. I can't come in October. I'm working at a job. I have to be in school in October. So I went to Europe. I had been invited to stay with my friend in France. So I got to my friend's house in France, and I still didn't have a plan of what I was going to do. And Eleanor said, well, Mom, you left it too late, which is true. I did, it was June. So I was in my friend's house in France. I was like, what am I going to do? So she and I both did some research, and she found a way for me to volunteer in Calais. There's a similar situation in Calais because in northern France, across the English Channel from England, because the refugees land up there because they're all trying to get to Great Britain. And you may have heard about the Calais jungle, which is just the name for their refugee camp in the woods. And because I speak French and because it would have been cheaper, I wouldn't have had the airfare to Greece. And I thought about that, but then I thought, no, it's Greece. I've got to go to Greece. So before Jerry had died, he had been listening occasionally to a broadcast on WSKG on the BBC where they do stories about extraordinary people. And he'd heard a story about a refugee family who had lost their cat in the journey from Iraq to Greece. And one of the volunteers had found the cat and returned it to them. So there was this story about this refugee cat that he had heard on the radio. And I thought, okay, I'll look that up. So I looked it up on the internet and I found it on Facebook. And I found the person who had written a children's book about it. And I friended her on Facebook. And then she had a friend who was Philippa Kempson. And that led me to Philippa. So through Facebook. So I sent her a message and said, I'm in France and I want to come volunteer in Greece. And she just said, sure, fine, that's great. She didn't want to know if I was a good person. She didn't want to know how old I was. She didn't want to know anything. She just said, you got to pay your own way, but I can get you a discount because the guy who owns the guest house is my friend. And you got to have a car and pay your own car. I said, that's fine. I was going to do that anyway. So I stayed a few days extra with my friend because I was still a little scared to go. I said, gee, I'm going to leave Thursday. And I had planned to leave Tuesday. She was like, Thursday? Oh boy, she was stuck with me another 2 days. But I had cold feet. I was really very anxious. But, I got to Greece. I took the ferry from Athens to the island. I rented the car. I showed up. I was very stressed. I mean, it was a long day.
Right.
I got there and so Philippa said, okay, you can start today or tomorrow, next day, whenever. I said, let's start right now. So at that time, I met 2 lovely young women who were actually from the United States. That first group I met was a big group from the United States. And we went, our job was to stand in a really beautiful space on the shore of the Aegean to look for boats, to see if we could see any refugee boats. So there we were in the sunset, and it was really just beautiful. But that's how I got into it. And I just think the good Lord led me to the 2 best people.
Thank you. You're a courageous woman. You're brave and inspiring. Thank you for that.
Well, you're welcome.
Susan, I'd like to know if there are any people on Lesvos who are more cooperative toward the refugees. Are there any people there that are willing to work and help them, or is everybody just against them because they're taking jobs and causing so much problems?
Yes, it's not everybody. Not everybody. There was a little restaurant that got started with local help that the refugees could work at, cooking and serving. This past winter, when it's been so cold, a lot of local people came forward and said, "Look, send these people to stay in my house. It's too cold for them in those tents." And the refugees, the government gives them a stipend. They give them, it's when I was there, it was like 90 euros a month for an individual and more for a family. And they spend it right there because they have nowhere else to go. So it's not all bad. It's like a sort of human endeavor. Because they do, they buy stuff, they buy cell phones, they buy time on the cell phones, they buy food in grocery stores, they go out and have ice cream in the evening. They're part of they're at the bus stop, when I went to work, when I stayed in town and I would get the bus in the morning to go to the refugee camp, and I got a discount. There was a discount for the refugee bus. Instead of €1.25, it was just €1.
So they live as normal a life as they can. They still enjoy things like ice cream and things like that whenever they get a chance.
When they get a chance, sure, and go swimming, because the beaches are all free. There aren't really private beaches, in my understanding. I think a lot of the beaches are open. This was before COVID, though. With COVID and the coronavirus, things got locked down, and it's been very difficult. For everybody. I mean, they have, very, very strict restrictions for everybody in Greece to try to stem the virus. But yeah, in the summer, it was more normal. That's a good question.
Susan, can you hear Beverly?
Yes, hi, of course.
Hi, I am reflecting on the years that I've contributed to Doctors Without Borders. And I have done that many, many years. And I'm wondering, do you have any insight as to how their monies are spent? They do give you a reckoning, but is that really the way their monies are spent? I think they make a wonderful contribution, not only to places like Greece, but they also contribute to places in India, in South America, in Africa particularly. Do you have any insight as to their operation?
Well, I've always held them in high esteem. They're kind of my heroes, and I think I think they're reputable, and I think they spend. I think they have very low overhead, and they spend everything, almost everything, to help people. I volunteered for 4 or 5 days at a women's clinic that was run by a group from Spain, and we were across this little compound from the Doctors Without Borders. And I was actually so starstruck, I never went over and said hello. I mean, it occurred to me later how silly it was, because I wanted to learn about them, forever. And there I was right next door to them, and I was too shy. But I think I've never heard anything bad. And they really do heroic stuff. I mean, the little clinic I was working in, and I'm sure their little clinic, you just have basically the bare necessities. For example, in the clinic where I was, there was no refrigeration. So the doctors would take Pepsi bottles home and fill them with water and put them in the freezer at the hotel where they were, at the guest house or wherever they were staying, and then come during the day with the frozen thing of water. That's what they've used for drinking water during the day as it melted. I mean, and they were very unpretentious and really down to earth. And I have the same feeling and the same sense about Doctors Without Borders. I think they're a good place to send money. I think they're a good organization.
I think they're rated very highly on Charity Navigator, if you ever use that to find out what different charities, how they spend their money. And Doctors Without Borders is up near the top as being the least, like you say, overhead. They give most of the money for the work that they're doing.
Yeah, that's good to know. I hadn't looked into it, but that goes along with what I tend to think.
That is good to know, because you always have at the back of your mind, well, is the money that I'm donating, is it being spent the way I would like to know it's being spent? And so that is something that I'm very grateful to know about, and feel a little bit better about patting myself on the back. However, I guess I've always had a tendency to want to help the people that I feel may be in need of. And I remember first starting with some of the organizations that helped our own indigenous people in the United States. And I just vaguely remember that a lot of them belong to the Catholic Church. And so I felt, well, perhaps they're doing something good, and perhaps my money is being spent the way I would like to know that it's being spent.
We all hope. There's a lot of need. There's a lot of need.
There is a lot of need, and we don't know sometimes the half of the need of people who live quite a distance from us. And also, we don't know the need of people who may live right next door to us either.
That's also true.
So thanks for your presentation.
Oh, you're quite welcome.
Very illuminating.
We've come to about 12:33. So are there is there one or two final questions?
Or comments?
Or comments?
Just thanks for inviting me. It was very interesting. Susie. Bye, Susan. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you.
And nice to meet all of you too. Bye.
Well, we're glad to have you included in our conversation. Again.
Maybe. Bye-bye.